Hello everyone. My topic for today is dental implications of diabetes mellitus, guided by Dr. Bhushan Bhagat. Today we are going to deal with a disorder which we as dentists have to face day in day out. Now imagine a patient coming to you and he doesn't know that he's a diabetic. Then we need to ask him a few questions which include: do you ever have episodes of very low or very high blood sugar, that is hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia? Do you ever find yourself disoriented, agitated, or anxious for no apparent reason? Do you have any mouth sores or discomfort? Does your mouth ever feel dry? We asked him these questions because there are a few signs and symptoms of diabetes mellitus, which include blurred vision, polyuria, which is excessive urination, leading to polydipsia, that is excessive fluid craving, overall, which leads to weight loss. The other signs and symptoms are polyphagia, fatigue, feelings of generalized weakness, and there is excessive weight loss. In OS, we need to deal with the signs and symptoms of slow healing of sores and skin wounds, evidences of peripheral neuropathy, and tendency towards infections. In oral cavity, diabetes mellitus shows a few signs and symptoms of frequent caries, pulp necrosis, periapical abscesses, and periodontal diseases. Now, we saw in case 1 that patient didn't know that he was a diabetic. Now, if the patient knows that he's a diabetic, he's going to have some medications. The classification for anti-diabetic medications are sulfonylureas, bigonides, meglitinides, thiazolidinediones, and alpha glucosidase inhibitors. The trade names and commonly used medications that we need to look for us to know that he's a diabetic are gluconom G1, which is a combination of tolbutamide and glipizide, which comes under the category of sulfonylureas; galvesmate or glycomate. This is the most commonly used medication as it is the first line treatment in case of diabetes mellitus, which includes metformin in it, which comes under the category of bigonides. And the last one is volgibose, which is a combination of acarbose and which comes under the category of alpha glucosidase inhibitors. Now, in case that you know the patient is a diabetic, then you need to ask him a few questions, which include: how old were you when you were diagnosed with diabetes, and what type of diabetes do you have? What medications do you take? How do you monitor your blood sugar levels? When was the last time you visited a doctor for your sugar levels to be checked? What was the most recent HbA1c result? Do you have any other medical conditions concerning heart or any other abnormalities? Now, even if he is a known diabetic or an unknown diabetic, we need to do a few investigations in routine, which include random BSLs. If the random BSL is less than 200 milligrams per deciliter, it is considered not to be a diabetic. If it is more, then it suggests of diabetes. If it is more than 200, then we need to do further investigations, which include fasting BSL, which is if it is less than 100 milligrams per deciliter, it is considered to be normal. If it is between 100 to 125 milligrams per deciliter, it is considered to be pre-diabetic. If it is more than 130 milligrams per deciliter, it is considered to be diabetic. Postprandial blood sugar levels, if it is less than 120 milligrams per deciliter, it is normal. If it is between 120 to 180 milligrams per deciliter, it is considered to be pre-diabetic. If it is more than 180 milligrams per deciliter, it is considered to be diabetic. Now, HbA1c is a method used to check for glycosylated hemoglobin, which gives us a result for suspected diabetic patients for the past 3 months. Now, if the patient has had a heavy meal the day prior to doing fasting BSLs, postprandial BSLs, and random BSLs, then obviously the blood sugar levels are going to be seen elevated. So what we can do is get HbA1c done because it shows us the results of the past 3 months. If the HbA1c results are less than 7, then it is considered to be normal. Now, the term sliding scale insulin refers to the progressive increase in the pre-meal or nighttime insulin dose based on predefined blood glucose ranges. Sliding scale insulin regimens approximate daily insulin requirements. Sliding scale insulin is important in Ludwig's angina patient because if they are diabetic, they cannot wait for longer periods of time for their sugar levels to be gotten under control. This is the table for sliding scale insulin. Now we have done all the investigations. Now we know that patient is diabetic. Now we need to know that what exactly is diabetes. Diabetes is a disease in which body's ability to produce or respond to the hormone insulin is impaired, resulting in abnormal metabolism of carbohydrates and elevated levels of glucose in the blood. There are three types of diabetes. Type 1 results from the pancreatic failure to produce enough insulin due to loss of beta cells. It is an autoimmune disorder. Type 2 diabetes is the most common diabetes which we come across, and in which there is insulin resistance, in which the cells fail to respond to the insulin properly. And the third one is gestational diabetes, in which the pregnant women have diabetes, but there was no signs of previous or high blood sugar levels previously. Things to be remembered in diabetic patients are morning appointments. This is because the levels of glucocorticoids during the mornings are going to be higher, which are going to help preventing in the signs and symptoms of hypoglycemia. Patients should not be starved while being treated. Again, this is because we should not come across hypoglycemia. Then the medication should be altered according to the line of the treatment. Antibiotic prophylaxis is important as per the protocol. This is because the patients of diabetes mellitus, as we have seen, are going to be prone to infections. The elective procedure should be prevented in case of uncontrolled diabetes. Implant should be prevented in case of uncontrolled diabetes. The medication should be altered if it is a surgical procedure, but this should be done under the guidance of patient's physician. Now, there is a concept which is known as delayed wound healing, which we come across. Diabetes causes the cell walls to become rigid, impairing the blood flow through the critically small blood vessels. When the blood glucose levels are persistently elevated, chemotaxis and phagocytosis are compromised. Chemotaxis is the process by which white blood cells are attracted to the site of infection, while the phagocytosis is the ingestion of the bacteria by the white blood cells. Now, how do we tackle delayed wound healing? To prevent the complications of delayed wound healing, we can ensure minimal injury to the tissues. So, if required, we can do transalveolar extractions rather than doing traumatic extractions. Transalveolar extraction is a method which involves the reflection of a mucoperiosteal flap, cutting of the bone, obstructing and the removal of the tooth, and if required, sectioning of the roots, and then the removal is done. Emergencies and management in diabetic patients are: the most common diabetic emergency which dentists encounter is hypoglycemia, which leads to life-threatening consequences. It occurs when the concentration of blood glucose level drops below 60 milligram per deciliter. The signs and symptoms that we need to look for hypoglycemia are confusion, restlessness, tremors, sweating, and tachycardia. Now, to tackle this, we have to establish an airway, breathing, and circulation. The patient is placed in a supine position, or just adjust the dental chair in a way that the patient's head is low and his knees are high. If the patient is conscious and he or she is able to take her food by mouth, so give 15 grams of carbohydrate in the form of either orange juice or 3 to 4 tablespoons of sugar. If the patient is unconscious, then take 50 ml of dextrose in 50% of concentration, or 1 milligram of glucagon intravenously, or 1 milligram of glucagon intramuscularly. The references taken were the textbook of oral and maxillofacial surgery by S.M. Balaji, Peterson's Principles of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, which was the second edition. Thank you.